Yeah, hello to our today's webinar, Microsoft Bitlocker To Go versus hardware-based USB encryption. My name is Daniel Döring. I'm working in the IT area since 2004. Since 2007, I'm focused on endpoint security, which means the key areas have been device control, encryption, monitoring, application control, and malware protection in several companies like EgoSecure, which has been a vendor of device control solution and also encryption, monitoring, and so on. Later on, Matrix 42, I was responsible as technical director for security and strategic alliances. And now I'm the managing director of EgoMind. EgoMind is a provider of software development as a service. So if you've got a new idea for a new kind of software or SaaS solution, we can help you with product development, product design, product management, and so on. So, but we are also taking a look on the IT solutions in the market. And this is why we are doing, for example, product reviews like we do today in our webinar. I'm also the managing director of the company Smart to Success. Smart to Success is a vendor of project management, and this project management can combine work management, assets, as well as processes and services in one solution. So you've got a complete overview about your projects, assets, processes, and services, and also changes and risks. Yeah, but today we would like to talk about encryption. In this case, USB encryption, because it is very interesting in the past. For example, in the year 2012, someone told me there's no need to talk about USB encryption because in future the most people will use cloud storages. But today we can see that a lot of companies and people are using USB devices, and these USB devices needs to protect it. And cloud storages, yes, they are also in use, but it's not like there's only cloud storage in use. The most data which is confidential or needs to be transferred from office to home office, etc., they are stored on USB devices, and these USB devices needs to be protected. In that case, for example, it's recommended to use encryption. But is it true? Are USB devices really still in use today? Yes, we can see, for example, by a study which has been made by Statista in Germany, that there are a lot of USB devices in use. You can see here, it's not like it's going down. There are less USB devices. It stays the same level. And USB devices are in use not for the same purposes as before, but they are in use. And you need to know about what USB devices are used by your employees, by your IT users, and how they are used and how they are protected. Because as we can see here, the study also tells us that there are up to 5 USB devices which are used by one employee and by one IT user. And this is very interesting because, there is not only cloud storage, there are also USB devices, and most IT responsible person, IT administrators, they don't know about the usage of USB devices in their company. They think, okay, it will be stored in the local network share or in a cloud storage or whatever the files are stored, but there are also USB devices. And I've got a question to you. What do you think? Are USB devices still in use? I would like to start a short poll. So do you currently use USB devices in your company? just tell us your opinion. Okay. So let's wait some seconds. But the most people have voted. And yes, we can see. I can share you the result. Yep. Now we can see 93% said yes. So USB devices are in use, but only 7% said no. They are using no USB devices, and or doesn't know that in the company USB devices are in use. According to Honeywell, we can see that USB devices have been used in OT environments, also in industrial companies. So the usage of USB devices in OT environments, industrial companies, has increased by 30% year on year. In 2021, the study has been made by Honeywell. And employees relegated to home office are increasingly using external USB devices, as I told you before, because they want to take their data from the office building to the home office. And the most easiest way is to use USB devices. And then they can continue their work at home after plug in the USB devices. This is not only since the pandemic, not only since Corona. It has been before because, yeah, some employees, they want to continue their work at home, and they store data on USB devices of the company to continue the work on a home PC, for example, or on a home office PC. But if this USB devices will be lost, there can be some risks in that case if there is sensitive data stored on the USB devices. And we can also see in OT environments or in OT infrastructures that the use of USB devices continues to increase, especially for air-gapped systems. Air-gapped systems are, for example, IT devices which is on a machine to put the data for the machine into the applications to start, for example, any kind of productions by these machines in OT environment. So, for example, in the automotive sector, we can see a lot of OT devices which are air-gapped, and in that case, you need USB devices to change the production processes and so on. And in that case, yeah, a lot of USB devices are in use. And this can also be a risk. For example, in the past, there have been some malware which have been known as Configure or Stuxnet. And these hacker attacks by this malware, they have been especially done for air-gapped systems. And the only way to infect the air-gapped systems has been by USB. So these malware attacks has been done by USB infections. So the malware was stored on the USB device. If a computer, for example, your computer has been infected, it automatically has started to deploy the malware also to plugged in USB devices. And if you go to the next computer, it has been started, the malware, and after the USB devices has been plugged in, and then the next computer has been infected. So we can see there are some hacker attacks by malware which are using the usage of USB devices. mostly for example, air-gapped systems, like we have seen in times of Configure and Stuxnet. And Configure and Stuxnet, it has been started in 2008, the malware infections. They are back now because of the Corona pandemic and the usage of home office. It's similar that the USB devices are in use and the attacker knows about it. So they are using USB devices to store their malware on it. But there is a gap between the different perceptions of the usage of private USB devices. Most IT managers say that in their company only say that 35% of the employees are using private USB devices. But the reality is that 77% of the employees surveyed in a study have already used private USB and storage media for related purposes as well. So most IT managers says, no, we don't have any private USB or any USB device in our company, but the reality is that some employees, they are just plugging in USB devices to store any kind of data on it for backup purposes, or also for the transfer from the office building to the home office. And which kind of data is stored on the on these devices? It's very interesting. Mostly customer information, also financial information, business plans, employee data, marketing plans, intellectual property, and source code. For us, for EgoMind, it's very interesting because we have seen that source code is also stored on USB devices. But we are a vendor of software development as a service, and we hope that the data which has been stored on USB devices, which is a source code, has been encrypted, as well as all other data, because all other data you can see here, customer information, financial information, business plans, and so on, they are sensitive data and they need to be protected, not only in case of GDPR, also in case of risks and threats in your company, because if you've got a business plan and your employees are losing the USB device, other people can get an access on it if it is not encrypted, and that can be a risk because you've got a plan what you want to do in future, which is your intellectual property too, and other companies which are in the same area as you, they shouldn't know about it normally. So any kind of data which is sensitive should be stored encrypted. If not, there's a big risk because of theft of external data storages, also the loss of external storages. They can cause that you can get some fines in case of GDPR or ICO and so on. And there can also be an image lost. Also data thefts, they are using USB devices because if you go to a company and a computer is not locked, for example, I have seen it a lot of times in a company, then you can just plug in the USB device, copy data from the computer which has not been locked, and you can steal data. Last time I have been traveling in the train in Germany, and I have also seen that there have been some notebooks, but people went to toilet and didn't lock the screen of the notebook. So in that case, it can also cause that data can be stolen by USB devices. This is why you need to take care about the usage of USB devices. And you also should use a device control that you make sure that only devices of your company are allowed to be used and no other else. So others should be blocked. But if you are using USB devices, the data on the USB devices should be encrypted, because this is needed in case of GDPR and other regulations, as well as malware protection. This is also a risk if there is data which is not being secure before, as I told you. So you need to take care about which kind of USB devices should be used in your company. And if USB devices are in use, you need to take care that all the data should be encrypted. And which kind of encryption methods are available in the market? We can see software-based encryption and hardware-based encryption. Software-based encryption is, for example, like Bitlocker To Go, which is built in, which is a container-based or volume-based encryption. There are also some other third-party container-based or volume-based encryption methods, and also file-based encryption methods. Any encryption is better than non-encryption. So we don't want to say this is the best encryption, whatever, in the next minutes. We just want to highlight some encryption methods, but yeah, any kind of encryption is better than no encryption. But if you want to have a high level in case of security, you need to take care about some aspects in case of encryption, but also in case of the usage of USB devices, because encryption is not only the whole security. You need to take care about some other topics in the usage of USB devices. But first of all, I would like to show you some examples of USB encryption. I will start with Bitlocker To Go as a software-based encryption, which is similar to container and volume-based encryption. And then I would like to show you some methods of hardware-based encryption, or some examples of hardware-based encryption. Yeah, let's start with Bitlocker To Go. The question mostly is Bitlocker really secure? And yes, Bitlocker, in case of the encryption method, is secure, but there are some aspects you need to think about. Because if there's a hacker attack, the attacker, they don't want to hack the encryption itself, because it takes time, effort, and yeah, no one wants to have a lot of effort. So the easier way is not to hack the encryption method itself, like AES 256 or other encryption methods which are common. It's easier to take a look how to find a way to get an access on the files themselves, not on the encryption algorithm. And the most easiest way is to guess passwords, or to make, for example, brute force attacks and so on. So there are some encryption methods which got a high encryption algorithm, like AES 256 bit encryption, but you can bypass it by getting the password by phishing attacks, for example, or brute force attacks, or also by bad USB manipulations. Bad USB is a method how to make any kind of USB devices to a bad USB, which is by manipulating the firmware. So by manipulating the firmware, for example, USB charging cable can be manipulated to become a keyboard. Okay, what does it mean? If you plug in the USB device, like the charging cable, the emulated keyboard will start to enter a script. And this script will be entered by a keyboard entry. And most anti-malware solution or antivirus solution, they don't detect these kind of attacks. Same as for USB devices, any kind of USB device can be manipulated. And if the firmware is able to be manipulated, you can have some risks because in that case, you can use the same USB device, which has been encrypted, for example, by Bitlocker To Go, as a bad USB. And you can read the entries of the keyboard, like the password entry, and store it on a other drive, like a cloud storage, that you get the protocol directly by cloud, or you can also store it on the USB device in a hidden partition, for example. And this is what you need to take care about. So Bitlocker itself is secure in case of the encryption, but there can be done some attacks. And there's another thing I would like to mention about the usage of Bitlocker, the incorrect storage of the recovery key, because if you want to use Bitlocker To Go, or also Bitlocker for HDDs or SSDs, you need to store a recovery key. And this file can be printed. Some print activities can also be monitored by others, or it can be stored on a, for example, USB drive. But the problem is that this drive is not allowed to be encrypted when you are storing the recovery key. I will show you later. So that means that this recovery key is available in clear text, is not protected, and attackers, they can also get an access on the recovery key and deactivate the encryption and get an access on the files which have been encrypted by Bitlocker To Go. Also, the recovery key is stored in the memory. So if you are able to read the memory out, then you've got the possibility to get an access on the recovery key. This is what you need to know. I will show you later how it looks like. And the users can also deactivate the encryption. So you think that these devices are encrypted, but they are not, because the user has deactivated or cancelled the encryption by formatting. But we would also take a look onto Bitlocker. Where can you use Bitlocker To Go? Bitlocker To Go is supported on most current Windows operation systems, like Windows 7 in Ultimate and Enterprise Edition, or Windows Vista Pro and Enterprise Edition of Windows 8 and 8.1, Pro Enterprise and Education editions of Windows 10, and Windows 11, as well as Windows Server 2008 and higher. But if there is Mac OS, iOS, Android device, there's no support to get an access to the encrypted data, which has been encrypted by Bitlocker, or to store further data encrypted in Bitlocker. This is what you need to make sure if you want to use Bitlocker To Go only on Microsoft operation systems, or if you want to use these data also on macOS, Android, or iOS devices, for example, or Linux devices. But how about the usage of Bitlocker To Go? How can I use Bitlocker To Go? You need to go to the control panel. I will show you in a live demo how it looks like. So here you can see BitLocker drive encryption, which is, for example, available for local HDDs, but also if a USB device has been plugged in. You can see it here for removable data drives that you can encrypt them by BitLocker To Go. To start the encryption of BitLocker To Go, just go to the control panel if you've got access to the control panel, and then you can turn on BitLocker. After that, a dialog will be started and the USB encryption will be prepared by entering a password. So you can use strong passwords or complex passwords, or also passphrases for BitLocker To Go, like a sentence which I will type in here. Oh, this is too short. Oh, there have been some. Yep, now it looks better. So you can use strong passwords or complex passwords, but there are less rules. It's only recommended to use upper and lowercase letters, numbers, spaces, and symbols. But in my case, for example, I didn't use numbers now or symbols. So there are no strong rule sets for the password. But there's one thing I would like to mention. It's good to have the possibility to use passphrases. It's not shown here. It would be better if you are that it would be highlighted to use passwords or passphrases, because passphrases are more complex and but easier to know than passwords. It would be good to get a hint about passphrases, because in that case most people are only using a password like ABC 123 and so on. It would be better to have a short hint about passphrases, which is, as I told you, easier to remember and complexer in case of security. Next step is that I need to store the recovery key. I mentioned I'm not really happy about it, because if I would like to store the recovery on a local disk which is encrypted, or on a USB drive which is encrypted, I'm not able to. I will get the hint that it is not possible to use this location because my folders are encrypted. It would be better if you can store it on an encrypted device, because in that case there's no possibility to recover this recovery key. In that case, there's a workaround how to store the recovery key on an encrypted device, hardware encrypted device, or software encrypted device, if you are using the print or the recovery key functionality. Then you are able to print it as PDF, and the PDF will be stored, or is allowed to be stored, on the encrypted device. Let's take a look how it looks like, how the recovery file got the information. Here you can see the identifier and the recovery key, which is needed if you are not able to get an access to the encrypted USB drive, or same for local HDDs or SSDs. Yeah, so as I told you, I don't like it that the file cannot be stored on an encrypted storage. Why do I don't like it? Because this file is not protected. It's just a TXT file, and yeah, there's no protection of the most important information about the encryption, the recovery key. There should be some more protection of this key. And you are not able to continue if you have not saved the recovery key or printed it. Now I have printed it as PDF. Now I can continue to encrypt the data. Here I can encrypt the used disk space, which is faster and recommended by Bitlocker. If you've got a new USB device, this would be okay. But if the USB device has been used before, I would recommend to use the entire drive encryption. Yes, it takes some more time, and yes, you will not like it if you've got 200 USB devices which needs to be encrypted, but it's more secure if the USB drive has been used before, because there can be some sectors, if you are using only the used disk space, where data is stored after it has been deleted. Because if you delete any data, only the information where the files has been stored will be deleted, but the content will stay on the USB drive. And if it will not be encrypted, there is the possibility to recover this USB, this content on the USB drive, or data on the USB drive, which has been deleted before by recovery tools. This is what you need to make sure. So if you've got a new device, you can say only the used disk space should be encrypted. If the USB drive has been used before, just select here enter drive. And yes, then you need to wait some time. Also, for me, it would be better if this method would be recommended, because the compatible mode is only for Windows operation systems which are older than Windows 10, 15, 11. This is not the newest or the latest Windows 10 version. It's in use since a few years. So the most people got a higher version than Windows 10 version 15.11, and then the XTS AES is supported and is more secure to be used than the older encryption method, only AES without XTS. Yeah, and then you can start the encryption. I only said that the used disk space should be encrypted, so it takes some seconds, and after that the encryption is completed. And now I'm able to turn off Bitlocker again. So for example, I can tell my administrator, IT administrator, yes, I'm using a USB device and I have activated Bitlocker, and 5 minutes later I can turn it off and can say I don't want to use it. If you want to make sure that encryption will be used all the time and immediately without any preparation of the encryption itself, it's easier to use hardware-based encryption. Hardware-based encryption, for example, is available from Kingston Technology. We have taken a look on devices like the Ironkey devices. Here in that case, you can see the VaultPrivacy ATS. It's a SSD. Looks like a smartphone or mobile device, but this is a SSD which can be plugged in on any kind of computer. So also on OT devices, as well as Microsoft operation system devices, macOS, Linux, iOS, or Android. So this is an external SSD. There are also devices available which are smaller, like a USB drive, like the KP200, which got a keypad on it and is on the format of the USB drive. And both of them, the VP80AS and the smaller one, KP200, they can be used on any kind of operation system. What I like in case of hardware-based encryption is that encryption is activated from beginning, from the first use, and can't be stopped. In case of hardware-based encryption, you need to take a deeper look on the hardware-based encrypted devices, because there are some vendors which are available on online shops, for example. They say, yes, we've got hardware-based encryption, but they are not really secure because you can bypass the password authentication, for example, if you open the device and get an access on it, or you can read the activities which will be done. And you need to make sure that devices are certificated, for example, by a FIPS certificate. Here, Kingston devices are very secure because they are FIPS certificated. And for example, if you are entering your password, the password will not be used directly to make the encrypted USB drive available. There is an encrypted tunnel, so the password will be transferred or used, or the password information will be used encrypted, and no one can read out this information about your password. So there's a protection against attackers. And I also like, for example, that there is a firmware protection. So for example, if you plug in your USB device, then you can see the self-protection which will be started. So the firmware will be checked, and if anything has been manipulated on the firmware, this device is not able to be used. So this device can't be a bad USB, as I mentioned before, as other USB devices, because manipulation of the firmware is not possible. And it's not possible to get information about password authentication and so on. And these devices, the VP80AS and the KP200, as I told you, can be used on any computer. Doesn't matter which kind of operation system. You just plug in, enter your PIN here, and then the access on the data which is stored on the USB drive is possible. Also, for example, on machines which got no keyboard. And what I also like is, after performing the self-test and starting the authentication, if you're entering the password or passphrase, like here, the letters or icons and the numbers are not at the same position as before. So it changes. So if someone sees, okay, the first entry has been done at the upper side of this display, next time, it will not be at the same place. So for example, if I press M, next time it will be on another part of this display. So the letters, the numbers and icons, they are not always at the same position, and then it's not easier to guess the password by taking a look where the most activities has been done, and for example, there are some scratches or anything like that. There's also a USB drive, which looks like a USB drive, the Ironkey VaultPrivacy 50. Similar in case of protection methods like the Ironkey, VaultPrivacy, ATES, which I have shown you, or the keypad 200, KP 200. But this is an USB drive which got an emulated CD. Here you can start an application. I can show you. You don't need to install this application. It's an executable file, and then you've got the possibility to if you want to use it in first use, to enter a complex password, which got password rules, and or you can also use passphrases. Passphrases are sentences, for example, as I told you. Like, for example, Kingston is with you. It's easier to remember, and but more complex than a password, and it can be much more longer. Minimum is 10 characters. If you want to, if you don't want to see the password, yes, you can hide it. Here you can see it, so you can decide if you want to see it or not. And if you don't want to enter the password, or if you are not able to enter the password by your keyboard, there's also the possibility to use a virtual keyboard, as you can see here. And this virtual keyboard can also be protected against screen locker attacks. So there's a screen locker protection if you type in your password and click on the letters, for example, it will be hidden for screen locker attacks. Yeah, I'm also able to enter 2 passwords, one for the admin and one for the user. So you can decide if you want to have 1 password only for the user or 2 passwords for the administrator. The administrator got the possibility to tell a one-time password if the user has lost his or forgotten his password. Then you can help the user by the one-time password which has been entered before by the administrator. So now the second password for the user will be entered, because I have decided to use admin password and user password. The first one is the admin password. The second one is the user password. For the user password, you can say that after the next login, the password should be resetted, so the user can enter his own password. This is only an initial password, for example. And after that, I can enter, if I want to, some information about my name, for example, my company, and some information, for example, if I have lost this USB drive and you have found it, just send it to this address, for example. But it's optional. You don't need to enter it. And that's all. After that, the encrypted USB drive can be used. There's no further preparation needed. You don't need to wait until the encryption has been done initial. You can start immediately and store data on this hardware encrypted USB drive. If you want to change anything, there's the possibility to change the password, for example. You can enter the current password and the new one. You can change the contact information. There's a multi-language support. So you can change also the language, and the administrator can also say, okay, after I have stored data on it, for example, presentations, this device will only be in a, or only stay in a read-only mode. So for example, if you want to send some presentations or other data which should not be changed or manipulated by USB drives, you can put it on the USB drive. You can say, okay, now I start the read-only mode for the user data, and then there is no manipulation or changing of the data possible. So it stays like it is, and malware infections are not possible in that case if you just want to share data by the USB drive. And you can also reset the password, and here you can also get one-time password. For example, if the user has forgotten his password, you can create a recovery password, which is a one-time password, and then the user can use another new password in future. So it's very easy to use, and the encryption always runs in background because it's hardware based, and you can use this USB encryption not only on Windows operation system, also for example on Mac OS, like in the case of the VP50, or in case of AT-ES and KP200 on any kind of computer. Also, for example, on OT devices. Yeah, how to use? Just open the application, select language, password, passphrase, and optional, you can also enter an administrator password and your contact details. And the question about is it secure? Is hardware-based encryption really secure? Yes, if you got hardware-based encrypted devices which got more protection methods, like I have shown you, the protection against screen loggers and keyloggers, also protection against the manipulation of the firmware, and the Kingston USB devices got the protection against the manipulation, as I have shown you. Self-test will be done after the USB device has been plugged in immediately, and only if the firmware is not manipulated, the USB device can be used. Also, brute force attacks can be blocked because after you have entered the password wrong for several times, it will be blocked, or the USB drive will be formatted. There's no need to store the recovery key because you don't need it as a file or as a print, and it's not possible to deactivate the encryption itself by formatting or by the user. So it's more secure than in this example, Bitlocker To Go software-based encryption. Yeah, the benefits are you've got more security, and it's also FIPS certificated, faster to be used. Not only if you are using a prepared USB drive, also if you want to prepare the USB drive, it's much more easier and faster. We've got a better performance detected on these USB drives because there's no further activity like in software-based encryption. Hardware-based encryption got the best performance because the encryption will be done by the hardware and not by further activities on the CPU or on the hard drive or anything else. You've got lower administration costs because you just buy the USB drive. You don't need to prepare it, like I have shown you on the example of Bitlocker To Go. just enter a password or just give your employees the USB drive, and then they can start immediately. And in case of operation systems and devices like OT devices or IT devices, there are almost unlimited application scenarios depending on which kind of USB drive you are using from Kingston, Ironkey, VaultPrivacy 80 ES, keypad 200, or VaultPrivacy 50 for Windows and macOS. Conclusion, you can prevent by any kind of encryption the data loss. This is the most important thing. But in case of hardware-based encryption, you got also a protection against data thefts, because some of these Kingston devices can be personalized. And if you're using, for example, a device control solution, which is able to allow devices by a serial number, hardware ID, or volume ID, the personalization program of Kingston got the possibility that you can say this serial numbers should only be used for my company. And then in case of device control, you can say only these serial numbers which I have get from Kingston are allowed to be used, or these devices which got these serial numbers. And for example, in the content of the serial number, there is my company name or anything like that, and then you can just use the device control solution to allow devices which got your company in the serial number, for example. This can be also be done by Kingston, by the personalization program, that some of these hardware encrypted USB drives, they can also be used for personalization. Yeah, and also malware protection, bad USB protection is also needed. And in case of Kingston hardware encrypted USB drives, there are some protection methods against malware attacks or bad USB attacks. The hardware-based encryption USB drives got very strong authentication and secure authentication through passphrases, which are easy to remember but very complex, or complex password policies. The tamper protection is also available on some USB drives of Kingston, that it's not possible to get a physical access on the chip of the USB drive. So if you open the cover, you can't get an access on the chipset or the platine of the USB device because of the tamper protection, which are available on some of the Kingston devices, for example, the KP200, which is FIPS certificated too. Also, there's a malware protection. The personalization, as I told you, got the possibility to store information into the hardware ID or serial number, which can be used for device control solution, that you can say, okay, only one rule will be done to allow your company-owned devices. And there's a recovery password, which can also be used, but it's optional. You can decide if you want to use or not. And you can choose between the devices which got a software authentication, like the Ironkey VaultPrivacy 50, or an integrated authentication like the keypad 200, KP200, or VP80 ES. So this is all from my side. Thanks for your attention. But now I can see there are some questions about the technology, or also about some information I have shared in this webinar. For example, about what is the OT in OT infrastructure. The OT devices are devices which are in an infrastructure of a company which got production machines. So these devices, for example, got no mouse or keyboard to enter anything. They are mostly displays, which got touch screen, and there you can manage the machines, what should be produced, how it should be produced, the robots, and so on, the robots. And also, for example, OT devices are cashier computers. For example, if you go to a shop and you want to pay, these are sometimes also OT devices, because these are a whole product. And ATMs can also be mentioned as OT devices, but mostly OT devices are in the operation IT, which means they are devices which manages the robots and the machines in case of production. Okay, and then there are some further technical questions, and I would like to introduce you to Ryan Amaro. Ryan will be available also for deeper technical questions, and I can see there are some. Thanks for your support from Ryan and Kingston Technology. Yeah, hello Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, my name is Ryan. I work for the Kingston office in the UK. I'm a field application engineer, specializing in encrypted USB product range. I deal with the technical aspects, support, and providing solutions with pre-sales projects for Kingston's products.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, and there's a first question I would like to ask you to answer. The question is, what speed does the VP50 run at?
For the VP50, the speed of this is for the 8 gig capacity up to the 128, it's 250 megabytes read and 180 megabytes write. And for the 256, the highest capacity is 230 megabytes read and 150 megabytes write.
Okay, thanks. The next question is, how does the virtual keyboard work?
So the virtual keyboard will be available from the authentication launcher and can be selected as an option, an alternative option for the physical keyboard, so they can add an extra protection from any screen logger or key logger when typing in the password if they believe that they're in an unsecure environment or host system.
Mm-hmm. Next question is, can we roll out VP50 on scale and asset management, then through serialization? I guess it's about the personalization program.
Yeah, so for this product, yes, it can be asset managed, since it's got a unique serial number and a PID, VID as well. It's a standard feature on encrypted USB's product line. And if they use an asset management system or an endpoint solution through this through these values embedded in the encrypted USB, they can make use of it with their solutions that they're currently using.
Okay,